Lead me to some soul today. Oh, teach me, Lord, just what
Welcome,
to
everyone,
say.
to episode number 70 of a series that we've been calling Leading Others to Christ. Those of you who've been listening and watching, the interview will be about evangelism. I looked it up this morning. We started this back in March of 2020 when all this COVID nonsense hit. And we had this idea. We wanted to find out those fellow workers, co-workers that are out there, wherever they might be, who they are, preachers or elders, deacons, men and women in the congregations. Find out who they are, interview them, and see how they're doing their work. What studies do they use? How do they set up the studies? And this, I'll be honest with you, this has been so exciting for me because probably over 70% of the people I've never met in person. Our guest today, I have met, but I've made so many new friends and we've learned so many new ideas of things that people are doing successfully in their communities of leading others to Christ. And so we're so glad that you're here. And one of the things that we've mentioned so many times, we hope that we can stir you up. Sometimes we lose our enthusiasm. Remember the statement to the church in Ephesus that they'd lost their first love. And we're hoping that through this episode and this project that we're doing, that if you've never been involved in leading others to Christ, that you would get motivated to do that. Maybe you tried it before and the fire went out. Maybe we can reactivate that, get you going again. My name is Dan Barker, and I preach for the Creekside Church of Christ in Franklin, Indiana. Franklin's about 20 miles south of downtown Indianapolis. I also serve as one of the elders. I've always mentioned this passage in 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul was talking to Timothy, and he said, "And the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men, obviously, and women who will be able to teach others also." I've been passionate about evangelism ever since I was 21 years old when I obeyed the gospel in Owensboro, Kentucky. I've tried to read everything I could get my hands on, listen to anybody that I could, and because I realized what it was like to be lost, and I wanted to try to share this with anybody that I possibly could. And we are so excited today to have someone with us that I'm confident we're going to learn a lot about. So if you're not driving the car, get your yellow pad out and make some notes. But we have with us today Phillip Shumake. Phillip, welcome.
Hey, great to see you today. Good to be on with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I know Phillip works, and we're going to have you tell us a little bit about Embry Hills in a few minutes, but he works with the congregation there in Atlanta. And we talked a little bit the other day. We first met, and when you and your family moved to Lexington, and when you were getting ready to start preaching there, you came over to the Fayette congregation. That's when we first met. And I know how busy your schedule is, and we really appreciate you squeezing us in here today. And thank you again for that.
Oh, it's really great. We have lots of good memories from being in Lexington. There was good work to be done, but there were so many good Christians that built us up and encouraged us in that time as well. Very thankful for those years.
Yeah, we are too. I think we were there for 28 years in Lexington. So I know. Anyway, I always start out, and I know you've listened to some of the podcasts, what I call the old elevator pitch or a short bio. And for the ones that don't know, Phillip, go all the way back to where you were born, about how old you were when you obeyed the gospel, and bring us up to speed here of who Phillip is.
Sure. I love telling people that I'm from a small town with more cows than people. I grew up just north of Nashville, Tennessee, in the Middle Tennessee area, and had great parents, a twin brother and a younger brother, just wonderful family life growing up. And I went off to college, jumped down to Florida College for my sophomore year, and met David Banning. He was a big influence. We'd had great preachers growing up, Sean Bain, others, but met David Banning, and he was a great influence on me. And after FC, finished up in Middle Tennessee, but went to Kleinwood out in Houston, Texas, and really enjoyed my time there. That's where I met my wife, Tracy. I guess I did skip my baptism. I was about 12 years old when I was baptized. But yes, after college, went to Kleinwood and did the 2-year training program with that congregation and just got to see so much. The elders there were so good to include me in different decision-making meetings, not for me to give input, but for me to see the way they processed different problems that would come up in the local church. And I just was so blessed to have that time there, and then spent 3.5 years in Florida. That's where our son was born, Andrew. Then came on up to Lexington, as you mentioned, spent 8 years in Kentucky, and that's where our daughter Abigail was born. So we have Andrew and Abby. My wife's name is Tracy. And now we've been in the Atlanta area for about 6 years, working with the Embry Hills congregation. And I do like to joke that I'm evangelist number 27 because we have so many active members that it has just opened my eyes to what can be done. And I say to myself all the time, don't break it, don't break it, don't break it. Which part of that is conserving what we're already doing, but another big part of that is just pushing forward and being willing to try new things and make our own mistakes as we go, but look for opportunities to sow the seed in this area.
That's so good. Thank you for bringing us up to speed. I learned a few things there. More cows than people. That's good. Well, what's the town, or what is the town?
Oh, so that was Cottontown, Tennessee, just outside of White House. Yeah,
I know where White House is, but Cottontown, that's good.
Yes.
I tease my wife all the time. She grew up in Philpott, Kentucky. It's outside of Owensboro.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's so good. And I'm anxious, and I know of our listeners are anxious too to hear a little bit about Embry Hills. I want to start out with this. I've done this with several, and you touched on it there a little bit. One of the things in the business world or just out there is the why question. Several books on why, right? Why do you do what you do? I'm going to ask you that, Philip. You're a tech guy, and understand that, right? Your education, technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why are you a preacher? Why are you doing what you're doing?
So I really do remember being about 14, 15 years old in the back seat riding to worship, thinking to myself, I should be a preacher, and I'm not going to do that. I knew the responsibility, and I know that good news has to be told. And I never wanted my family to be in a fishbowl. But as I got older, I thought more and more, and even at Florida College, when I joined like the Sowers Club for the kids that are going to preach, I was like, I am not going to preach. I'm going to be a really involved member. But it just came to two conclusions. And one was that if I believe this, if every living person is going to spend eternity in either heaven or hell, then I have to do this. And then the second was that if I step into this work, I was convinced that God would bring me a spouse that could handle the fishbowl. And as nervous as I was about some of the criticism or the ways that people might judge my family more harshly, it has been the opposite. And I would want any young man considering being a preacher to know that there will be highs and lows. Those definitely come. But by and large, the brethren have been far more gracious to our family and supportive of our weaknesses and our faults than I could have ever anticipated. And so I'm so glad that did not keep me from this work, because I remember walking around Murfreesboro, MTSU, where I finished my degree, and just seeing all these people on the sidewalk and thinking, that's a soul, that's a soul, that's a soul, that's a soul. And they all need to hear about Jesus. So I think I felt compelled.
That is so good. Several things there that, I told you in the interview, I like to feed off things that I hear. I want to do this. Does Tracy know we're doing this today?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Let's do a shout out to Tracy. You mentioned her there. How important has she been in your work?
So we talk about in our marriage things that one of us sees in black and white and one of us sees in color and HD. And so if it's driving directions, I'm the one that sees in color and HD. But when it comes to time management, I am quick to overcommit, and she is so good at saying that's going to take twice as long as you expect. She has just got wonderful, like administrative, big picture kind of skills. She's the one that always bails me out when I am overcommitted. She is just priceless, of course, in keeping our home running and making it a place of peace so that when I come back from some of the most difficult conversations or studies, we can recharge and we can say, okay, they're going through this problem, but we're here to come alongside them and help them. And she is truly a big part of that. We said, even in our pre-marriage counseling, that Aquila and Priscilla would be our role models and that we wanted to do a lot of this work together. And so that has been the case coming up on 18 years.
Wow. Wow. Congratulations. See, I think, and Gay has been such a huge role. I wouldn't be a Christian today if it wasn't for Gay. I was not a Christian when I asked her out the first time. And her mother said, I asked her to go to the county fair in the summer, and I asked her to go on a Wednesday night. And her mother said, you can go. We have Bible study Wednesday night. Why don't you, I was Danny growing up. Why don't you ask Danny to come to Bible study and then you could go out? Gay said, would you come to Bible study first? Then we can go. And I said, I didn't really care about the Bible study. I just knew I wanted this cute girl to go out with me. And I said, sure. So I go, and then I look over there and there's one of my coaches. There's my chiropractor. There's my former paper boy. And I'm going, and it just started the whole process. It took me a long time. I think I was 17 and I was 21 before I obeyed. But yeah, Gay's been, I would not have done the things that I've done without her help and support through all this. So I think sometimes we don't show that appreciation enough. I'll speak for myself and thank them publicly enough. But tell everybody just real quick about Embry Hills. Give us a snapshot of the group there.
Okay, so what I love to tell people about Embry Hills, it's the biggest small church you're ever going to walk into.
I like that.
It's a lot of things at Embry Hills are just like any small church you've been to. We have got the classrooms with the wood paneling that hasn't been painted in way too many years. We've got the copy machines that break down like everybody else. But we're a large growing church. We, before COVID, were around 500.
Wow.
And we're still between 400 and 500 right now on a Sunday morning. So there's a lot of work to do. And we have a closeness as a family. It is not unusual at all for people to stay out after worship 45 minutes to an hour. And not just a few, a lot of people. There's a real closeness, lots of things going on during the week, and a very peculiar preaching schedule. I am one of 7 guys that fill the pulpit, although we're not, all fully supported, obviously. My job is to do 10 to 20 studies a week. And then my job is to preach 2 to 3 times a month. So my main focus is how many non-Christians can I study with to share the gospel, and how many groups of Christians can I get together with to edify and build up. And I'm just going to tell you, Dan, I'll never be the same. I had done work that I'm pleased with previously, but the spirit of evangelism here has gotten in my heart. And I feel like I walked into this. I didn't build this. So I'm not bragging. I walked into this and it's changed me. And it has been such a privilege. The other thing you should know about Embry Hills is that we are reflective of our community. And so Atlanta is a very diverse cultural place. It's not unusual for me in 1 week to study with a man from India, a man from China, a man from Russia, and a good old boy from Alabama. That's just the way things are here. And so we are a very diverse congregation in our cultural background. And that has been a whole nother level of joy just to see the Great Commission under one roof.
I love that. That's one of the fascinating things about doing all this. We've interviewed people from New York, from Harlem, New York to Tampa to Dallas to LA to Seattle, Washington, all over the place.
Yes. Yeah.
And even though we're all doing the same work, the character or the makeup of the work on a weekly basis is so different. And just to hear you say, there's a couple of things there I really like. But to say that your goal is to have how many studies a week?
10 to 20.
10 to 20. There would be some people that would say that would be my goal for the year. And because in so many places, I'm keep this positive, but this is one thing that we're learning is that there's about 3 conservative churches that are closing their doors a month. We have a preacher shortage going on right now. And so much of it, there's a lot of things we're learning, but there are so much of it is that people have not realized what their responsibility was to reach others in their community. And they've just grown up going to church. All the focus on the work, the local work has just been inside and not reaching out to people. And that now they're suffering the consequences of it. And so it's so exciting for me to hear you say that. And I just think a lot of people are going to go, what? Did I understand him? Did Phillip say that? And
yeah. And let's be clear. I was on the upper end of that before COVID, and I'm still rebuilding. I'm still rebuilding coming out of COVID, but that's the goal. And it was possible, but I tell you what, I can't do that and change the toner on the copy machine. No, I have to celebrate the deacons that jump in and that take care of these things. And I have to celebrate our shepherds, because even when I come up against maybe a study with a member or a study with a new convert that has a lot of drama going on in their life, the joke is the elders let me handle the easy. No matter how challenging it feels, I know that they are handling the real sheep issues so that my attention can be on studying for these studies with the lost. And even, so I have 2 different men's breakfasts. Those are mostly with members, but we're constantly inviting friends and neighbors. We're trying to talk to other people in the restaurants. We're trying to build relationships with the same waitress we have Wednesday after Wednesday, Friday after Friday. And so you can't do it, all the deacon work and all the shepherding work and still get to be the evangelist God has called us to be. And I'm so thankful to have the freedom to do that.
And I think it's great that you recognize those folks that are doing all of that. And that's one of the problems in some of the smaller groups is that they're doing the preaching, they're changing the they're doing the vacuuming and they're doing everything, and they get frustrated some. And anyway, but it's just the reality. But yeah, how blessed you are. We talk all the time celebrating the sowing, and because a lot of times, we're going to celebrate somebody repents or somebody obeys the gospel, of course, but we want to try to keep everybody focused on we're planting the seed. God will give the increase if it's going to happen.
Can I bounce off that?
Absolutely.
One of the things that has been really special here is that we try to do what we call our neighborhood gospel groups, where 1 or 2 times a year, we'll have Bible studies in 5 or 6 different homes. And the goal is to invite the people on our street. And the first one, we just went awesome. And a young woman and her husband came, and they both got baptized, and we were just studying the life of Christ, and it was just powerful. So we're like, we got to do that again. So we did it, and we hosted one at our house the second go around, and we had little door hangers. So we put them up and down the street, and nobody came. And for 6 weeks, it was just my family and the elders' family that was joining it, and no visitors. And I told the elders, like, guys, when something goes, we need to celebrate it. When it fails, we just need to own it and admit it. And Sewell stopped me. He said, Phillip, it's not a failure. People on your street know that you care about the scriptures. And here we come 2 years later into a pandemic, and my neighbor is out walking, and she says, aren't you the one that invited me to a Bible study years ago? And I said, yes, ma'am, that's me. She goes, I'm ready now. And we were able to start going through the Sermon on the Mount. Sewell was right, even though we had sown that seed years before. And I had tried to tell the elders, guys, I think this was a failure. Sewell said, no, like we can't give up early or call it a failure prematurely. And so I would hope that the ones that are listening to your podcast and are out there sowing would let the Lord in his time bring the increase and keep on sowing.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think it's so important because I've talked to so many people over the years and they just go, oh yeah, I tried that and it didn't work. And they didn't have a Sewell Hall or somebody saying, hey, you did great. That's our role is to plant and water and celebrate it if you had a study, or celebrate that you asked somebody for a study, that you asked somebody to come to worship, that you brought it up with that servant at the restaurant, whatever. But that's one of the things that's come out of this we're trying to do is say, hey, we can do this. What God has given us to do, it's not easy, but it's not hard. And if I've got a Phillip that I can work with, that makes it even better because you're going to encourage me and I'll encourage you. And we really teach a lot on that. There's a reason Jesus sent the 70 out 2 by 2, because I know if you and I are studying with somebody and they ask me a challenging question, I might look at you and you go, okay, I can help with that. And, but whatever, but that's so good. Can you believe it? Matt has already given me the 5-minute signal, Phillip. What in the world here? All right. Talk real quick. You mentioned a couple of them, but I looked at your website. I know you guys do a lot of meetups. Just real quickly, give a synopsis of what you're doing there with the effort that you're making in those areas.
So we do meetup studies that we use the app called Meetup, and we have what's called the Atlanta Bible Study Group. And usually those are on Tuesdays or Thursdays. My Tuesday class right now is just meeting at a Starbucks inside of a Kroger's that is nearby our building. And we're going through questions that skeptics often ask. And that was an idea that was brought up by Eric Borlaug. He's just incredible at working with atheists and skeptics. We're going through that, but Bill Sanchez does those studies as well. Oftentimes we are going through the book of Mark because we can rapidly cover the life of Christ, and we're just giving opportunities for people to get together. And so we have 2 other deacons that help run that and manage that. And then that frees our teachers up to just show up and teach. The teamwork you were talking about has been essential. I can't tell you the value in having a co-teacher, so that if there's a Tuesday night that your kids need you, the study doesn't have to get completely canceled. That other person can go, you can bounce off of each other and create some consistency there so that visitors can come and you can make that progress. So it's just been something that's been going on long before I moved here. And even if we don't baptize somebody from one of those studies, it is fostering this culture of evangelism. It's feeding that fire. When we think about being zealous for good works, it's feeding that spiritual fire so that we follow up with visitors from Sunday more consistently, and so that we're praying about evangelism more consistently. It just keeps that fire burning.
Oh, you got me on fire. This is good. And there's just, don't you agree with me? What we're talking about here needs to be broadcasted out there.
And let me just tell you about Shoemake. Can I do that? He's this young man who came in, and it wasn't long after Ben Hall had moved up to work in Brooklyn. And I said to myself, okay, if Ben was here, he would not let this guest get out the door without going to talk to him and trying to set up a study. And I'm so grateful for Ben's example. So go over and I talked to Liang. It turns out he's from China. He'd been at Vanderbilt in Nashville for about 5 years. And he and his wife both had read through the Bible and were watching YouTube videos about the shortcomings of evolution. And they were beginning to see that it just doesn't add up and it just doesn't explain all the life that we see. So he was very receptive about getting together. He was at Georgia Tech and having a study. And so I was able to get together with him, and we just looked at a simple timeline, God's promises to Adam and Eve, God's promise to David to send this coming king. and was able to talk to him not about a physical kingdom, but a spiritual kingdom. And coming out of China, a spiritual kingdom of righteousness sounded really good to Chile. And so that started our studies through the scriptures. And in about 6 months, he obeyed the gospel. A couple months later, his wife, Jennifer, obeyed the gospel. And they have just been so encouraging. He's helped teach other classes. He has done like a Wednesday night invitation. He leads the greatest prayers. He just is growing. And it's just been a joy to watch the gospel work in his life and to see God's providence to just open doors for him to continue to grow in his faith.
What a great story. Yeah, I love that. I'd love to meet him at some point. That'd be great. Yeah, we don't have time to keep going with that, but the providence of God, I love the subject. I don't understand all of it. I obviously don't understand how God works, but there's so many things like that you look back at and go, now, how was it again that I met him? How did that happen?
Those that seek will find. And I'll tell you, the verse that's become really just foundational for me is 1 Corinthians 1:21. In the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, but God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believed. I think about the Lord saying when Jesus was baptized, this is my son in whom I am well pleased.
Yes.
And to know that God is well pleased when we tell his story. My wife and I, we have stories about each other that I love it when she tells that story about me because it makes me look good. She loves it when I tell that story about her because it makes her look good. And God is well pleased when his people make him look good. When we talk about his grace and his sacrifice and all that he has done to justify and redeem us and adopt us, we have so much good news about the Lord to tell. And he could have written this in letters 100 feet high on the side of a mountain, but he put it in our hearts. He's well pleased when his people tell his story. That is power.
That'll preach, brother. That's good.
I'll start preaching instead of talking. But I mean, that verse has been so special to me to keep me moving in the hard days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so encouraging. That's good. We've got to close this down. We've had several say they need to be longer, or we're talking about different things to do, but it's because a lot of times we just get going here and we have to stop. But we end every one of them with what I call the one thing, and there's not one thing, but somebody's listening to this, Philip's got, you got them excited. And if they would say, what's one thing that I need to do, or one thing I need to learn how to do to lead others to Christ, what would you say, Philip?
So I think about Paul receiving the Macedonian call to go to Philippi, and he could take a small step and then watch for the unexpected opportunity. And I think some of the other guys have said that it never goes quite the way you think it's going to go. And I can just totally amen that. I think when we take that step, even in Acts, that he's dealing with this annoying person that just won't be quiet, but that created the unexpected opportunity of meeting the jailer. Yes. And for us to host that Bible study that felt like a failure, that was a small step, but we could open our home for 6 nights of no one showing up. And it created an unexpected opportunity. And I have studies right now with people that I would have never met if it had not been for a really bizarre series of events that got us there. And so I'm much more driven to take the small steps that we know are right in front of us and let the Lord bring that together.
Yeah. Sometimes we defeat ourselves for making it too hard, and we walk right by opportunities. We're not looking at out of the eyes that we should be. That's an old cliche, but we've all been guilty of it. Just walk right by somebody and not even notice them, and or hear somebody say something and not even respond because I'm not focused on what's at hand. I love your unexpected opportunities. I like that. That's good. All right. Somebody wanted to reach out to you. Would you be willing to share contact information?
Of course. Probably the best is to shoot me an email, Phillip with two L's, Philip, Shumake, Shumake @gmail.com. And I'd be happy to follow up with someone. Phillip Shumake @gmail.com.
All right, brother. We've had people, there's people out there that are listening and following up. So don't be surprised.
Wonderful.
Hey, keep up your good work and tell Tracy that we're proud of her, keeping you in line, keeping you focused. And yeah, but I really am proud of you for what you're doing and keep up the work there. And Lord willing, we can see each other again sometimes. So,
Dan, I can't wait to go back and to hear more episodes because you've just talked to some extremely talented brothers and I'm learning by just listening to them. Thank you.
Good. And if you would share this with your contacts, pass it on to others because there's others out there that have not heard this yet. But anyway, again, I wish we had more time, but thank you so much. And God bless you and your family and all that you're doing. Bye-bye.
Bye. Who pray, melt my heart and fill my life. Give me one soul today.